Sometimes it takes just one moment to turn your whole world upside down. Sometimes it takes just one child who sees the world differently than we adults do. At a luxurious party full of wealthy people, an old janitor stands in the corner of the room. He cleans quietly, and nobody notices him. But one little girl does. She walks up to him and asks him something simple. She wants to dance with him. In that moment, something unexpected begins to happen. The billionaire's daughter joins them. This dance changes everything. It shows that the true value of a person does not lie in money. It shows that love and humility are stronger than any wealth. Before we get back to the story, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story touched you, be sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I have prepared something extraordinarily special for you. What happened next will move you to tears. Sometimes it takes just one moment to turn your whole world upside down. Sometimes it takes just one child who sees the world differently than we adults do. At a luxurious party full of wealthy people, an old janitor stands in the corner of the room. He cleans quietly, and nobody notices him. But one little girl does. She walks up to him and asks him something simple. She wants to dance with him. In that moment, something unexpected begins to happen. The billionaire's daughter joins them. This dance changes everything. It shows that the true value of a person does not lie in money. It shows that love and humility are stronger than any wealth. Before we get back to the story, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story touched you, be sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I have prepared something extraordinarily special for you. What happened next will move you to tears. The morning started like every other morning for Thomas Novak. The alarm clock rang at 4:30 in the morning. He reached over to silence it before it could wake anyone, though there was no one left to wake. The apartment was silent. It had been silent for 10 years now. Thomas sat on the edge of his bed and looked at the photograph on his nightstand. His wife Marie smiled back at him from behind the glass. Next to her stood their daughter Anna, young and full of life. The photo was taken 20 years ago at the lake. They looked so happy. Thomas touched the frame gently and whispered good morning to them both, the way he did every single day. He stood slowly, his knees protesting the movement. 60 years had left their mark on his body. The small bathroom mirror showed him a face weathered by time and grief. Grey hair, deep lines around his eyes, hands that trembled slightly as he splashed cold water on his face. But his eyes still held kindness. That much had not changed. He dressed in his work uniform, a simple grey jumpsuit with his name stitched on the chest. The fabric was worn, but clean. Thomas took pride in his appearance, even if nobody else noticed. In the tiny kitchen, he made himself a cup of black coffee and ate a piece of bread with butter. He could not afford much else. His pension from teaching had disappeared when the school closed. The money from Marie's life insurance had gone to medical bills and Anna's education abroad. Now he lived on what he earned from cleaning. It was enough to pay rent and buy food. Nothing more, nothing less. He finished his coffee and washed the cup carefully. Everything in his apartment was old, but meticulously maintained. He put on his worn jacket and picked up his keys. Before leaving, he stopped at the small table by the door. There, in a simple wooden frame, was another photograph. Marie on their wedding day. He touched it briefly, a ritual he never skipped. Then he locked the door behind him and walked down 4 flights of stairs. The elevator had been broken for months. The city was still dark when Thomas stepped outside. The cold morning air bit at his face. He walked to the bus stop 3 blocks away. The streets were empty, except for a few delivery trucks and other early workers like himself. He recognized some of them. The baker who started work at 3 in the morning. The newspaper delivery man on his bicycle. The cleaning lady who worked at the hospital. They nodded to each other in silent acknowledgement. They were the invisible people who kept the city running while others slept. The bus arrived 15 minutes later. Thomas showed his monthly pass to the driver and took a seat near the back. He watched the city pass by the window as dawn began to break. Tall buildings reached toward the sky. Luxury cars were parked in front of expensive shops. This was not his world. He simply worked in it. The bus ride took 40 minutes. Thomas used the time to think about his day ahead. There was a big corporate party scheduled for tonight at the Riverside Tower. He worked there as a maintenance man and janitor. The building was 60 stories tall, all glass and steel. It housed the offices of Svoboda Industries, one of the largest companies in the country. Mr. Svoboda himself owned the entire building. Thomas had seen him a few times from a distance, a tall man in expensive suits who walked quickly and talked on his phone constantly. He had never spoken to Thomas. People like Mr. Svoboda did not speak to people like Thomas. Thomas arrived at Riverside Tower at 6 in the morning. He entered through the service entrance in the back, the one the cleaning staff used. The lobby through the front doors was magnificent, with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. But Thomas rarely saw it. He took the service elevator down to the basement where the maintenance office was located. His colleague Marta was already there, preparing her cleaning cart. Marta was 55 years old, a kind woman who had worked at the building for 15 years. She greeted Thomas with a warm smile. "Good morning, Thomas," she said. "Big day today. That party tonight is going to be huge." Thomas nodded as he hung up his jacket and put on his work gloves. "Yes, I heard. They are expecting over 200 guests." Marta shook her head. "Rich people and their parties. We will be cleaning until midnight, probably." A young man named Victor came in next. He was 23 years old and had only been working there for 6 months. He was studying at university and worked nights to pay for his education. Victor was always tired, but never complained. He respected Thomas and often asked him for advice. "Good morning, Mr. Novak," Victor said. Thomas smiled. "Just Thomas, please. How are your studies going?" Victor shrugged. "Difficult, but I manage. I have an exam next week." "You will do fine," Thomas encouraged him. "You are a smart young man." The 3 of them discussed their assignments for the day. Thomas was responsible for the upper floors and the main event hall on the 30th floor, where the party would take place. Marta would handle the executive offices. Victor would cover the lower floors and help with setup. Thomas pushed his cleaning cart into the service elevator and rode up to the 30th floor. The event hall was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. The morning sun was just beginning to light up the skyline. Thomas stood for a moment and looked out. He remembered bringing Anna here once when she was little. She had pressed her face against the glass and marveled at how small the cars looked from up high. That memory made him smile and ache at the same time. Anna had moved to America 8 years ago for work. She called him once a month, sometimes less. The conversations were brief and polite. She had her own life now, her own family. A husband Thomas had only met once, a grandson he had seen only in photographs. He understood. She needed to move forward. Staying here only reminded her of the mother she lost, but understanding did not make the loneliness easier. Thomas shook off the sadness and began his work. He swept the floors, wiped down the tables, cleaned the windows until they sparkled. The event planners would arrive later to set up decorations and arrange the furniture. His job was to make sure everything was spotless before they started. He worked methodically, the way he always did. He took pride in doing his job well, even though most people never noticed. When he was younger, Thomas had been a teacher. He taught literature at a high school for 25 years. He loved his job. He loved watching young minds discover the beauty of words and stories. But the school had closed due to budget cuts. He was 50 years old then, too old to easily find another teaching position. So he took whatever work he could find. Cleaning paid the bills. It was honest work. There was no shame in it. By noon, the event hall was ready. Thomas ate his lunch in the basement break room. He had brought a sandwich from home and an apple. Marta joined him with her own lunch. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Marta spoke. "Thomas, do you ever regret it?" "Regret what?" he asked. "Working here. Cleaning for people who do not even see us." Thomas thought about it. "No," he said quietly. "I do not regret it. Work is work. It has dignity if we bring dignity to it." "But does it not bother you?" Marta pressed. "How they look through us like we are invisible. How they leave their messes for us to clean without a second thought." Thomas smiled gently. "I used to let it bother me. But I learned something over the years. Their inability to see us says more about them than it does about us. We are not invisible. We simply exist in a different world than theirs." Marta nodded slowly. "You are a wise man, Thomas. I wish I had your peace." "Peace is just acceptance wearing a different coat," Thomas replied. "I accept what I cannot change, and I find meaning in what I can do, which is to do my work well and treat everyone with kindness, even if they do not return it." Victor came in and sat down with them. He looked exhausted. "Mr. Novak," he said, "how do you do this every day? How do you stay positive?" Thomas looked at the young man. "I think about the alternative," he said. "I could be bitter. I could be angry. I could hate the people who have more than me. But what would that give me, except a heavy heart? I choose to be grateful for what I have. A job. My health, mostly. Memories of people I loved. That is more than many people have." The afternoon passed quickly. By 5 in the evening, the party preparations were in full swing. Catering staff arrived with food and drinks. A DJ set up his equipment. Florists arranged elaborate centerpieces on every table. The event coordinator, a sharp woman named Petra, directed everyone with military precision. Thomas stayed out of the way, cleaning up small messes as they occurred and making sure the restrooms were stocked and spotless. The guests began arriving at 7. Thomas watched from a distance as luxury cars pulled up to the front entrance. Men in tailored suits and women in elegant dresses stepped out. They laughed and greeted each other with kisses on both cheeks. They carried expensive handbags and wore watches that probably cost more than Thomas made in a year. He did not judge them. They were simply people from a different world. The party filled up quickly. Music played. Champagne flowed. The sound of conversation and laughter echoed through the hall. Thomas moved quietly along the edges of the room, emptying trash bins and wiping up spills. Nobody looked at him. He was part of the background, like the furniture or the walls. He was used to it. At one point, he knelt down to pick up a broken glass someone had dropped. As he carefully gathered the pieces, a pair of expensive shoes stopped right next to him. He looked up. It was Mr. Svoboda himself. The billionaire was talking on his phone, completely unaware that Thomas was inches from his feet. Thomas waited patiently until the man moved away, then continued cleaning up the broken glass. No harm done. That was how his world worked. Around 8:30, Thomas noticed something that made him pause. A little girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, was standing near the buffet table looking lost. She wore a beautiful blue dress and had ribbons in her hair. She looked around the room with wide eyes, as if searching for someone. Thomas wondered whose child she was. Most of the guests had not brought their children. This was an adult affair. The girl picked up a small cake from the dessert table and took a bite. Then she wandered toward the windows, still looking around. Thomas kept an eye on her from a distance, making sure she was safe. Children did not belong in a world of champagne and business deals. She seemed out of place, just like he was, but for different reasons. The girl walked around the edge of the room, carefully avoiding the clusters of adults who paid her no attention. She stopped near where Thomas was standing with his cleaning cart. She looked up at him with curious eyes. "Hello," she said. "Hello," Thomas replied gently. "Are you having a nice time?" She shrugged. "It is boring. All the grown-ups just talk and talk. Nobody wants to play." Thomas smiled. Grown-up parties can be boring for children. "Where are your parents?" She pointed across the room. "My mama is talking to those people. She has been talking for a very long time." Thomas followed her gaze and saw a well-dressed woman engaged in animated conversation with a group of executives. "I am sure she will be done soon," Thomas said kindly. The little girl looked at his cleaning cart. "What is your job?" she asked. "I clean the building," Thomas answered. "I make sure everything is neat and tidy." "That is important," the girl said seriously. "My mama always says we should keep things clean." "Your mama is right," Thomas agreed. The girl smiled at him. Then, without warning, she asked a question that would change everything. "Do you know how to dance?" The question hung in the air between them like a delicate thread. "Do you know how to dance?" The little girl looked up at Thomas with such innocent hope in her eyes that he felt his heart squeeze. He glanced down at his worn grey uniform, at his work gloves stained with cleaning solution, at the mop and bucket beside him. He was an old janitor at a party full of elegant people. Dancing was not something he had done in many years, not since Marie. They used to dance in their tiny kitchen on Sunday mornings, no music needed, just the two of them swaying together while the coffee brewed. The memory was so vivid it almost hurt. He looked back at the little girl. "I used to know how to dance," he said softly. "A long time ago." The girl's face lit up. "Will you dance with me? Nobody else wants to. Please?" Thomas felt dozens of conflicting emotions crash through him at once. He wanted to say yes. This child reminded him so much of Anna at that age, full of light and unafraid to ask for what she wanted. But he was also acutely aware of where he was. This was not his place. He was the help, the invisible man who cleaned up after these people. If he stepped onto that dance floor with this child, he would become visible. And visibility brought judgment. He could already imagine the stares, the whispers, the disapproval. The event coordinator would probably ask him to leave. He might even lose his job. But then he looked into those hopeful eyes again, and none of that seemed to matter anymore. Thomas slowly removed his work gloves and set them on his cleaning cart. He straightened his uniform as best he could. Then he held out his hand to the little girl. "I would be honored to dance with you," he said. The girl squealed with delight and grabbed his hand. She pulled him toward the edge of the dance floor, where a few couples were already swaying to the music. Thomas felt every eye in the room turn toward them. The music was a slow song, something classical and elegant. He placed one hand gently on the girl's shoulder and held her other hand in his. She stood on his feet, the way children do when learning to dance, and he began to move slowly in a simple box step. The girl giggled. "This is fun," she said. "You are a good dancer." Thomas smiled. "You are a wonderful dance partner," he replied. "What is your name?" "Eliska," she said. "What is yours?" "My name is Thomas. It is very nice to meet you, Eliska." The girl beamed up at him. They continued to dance, moving slowly in a small circle. Thomas was intensely aware of the stares they were receiving. Conversations had stopped. People were watching them, some with curiosity, some with confusion, some with clear disapproval. He saw the event coordinator moving toward them with a stern expression. This was it. He was about to be asked to return to his duties, to remember his place. But then something extraordinary happened. A voice called out across the room. "Wait." Everyone turned to look. A young woman was making her way through the crowd. She was perhaps 25 years old, dressed in a stunning red gown that probably cost more than Thomas made in 6 months. Her jewelry caught the light as she moved, but it was her face that caught Thomas's attention. She looked like Mr. Svoboda. The same strong features, the same determined eyes. This must be his daughter. Thomas had heard she existed, but had never seen her. She lived abroad most of the year. The young woman walked right up to them on the dance floor. Eliska looked up at her with wide eyes. The woman smiled warmly. "May I join you?" she asked. Eliska nodded enthusiastically. The woman looked at Thomas. She did not look at him the way most wealthy people looked at service workers. She looked at him the way one human being looks at another, with respect, with recognition. "If you do not mind," she said to him, "I would love to dance too." Thomas was so surprised he almost could not speak. He managed to nod. "Of course," he said quietly. The woman took Eliska's other hand, and suddenly the three of them were dancing together in a small circle. The Kuskunat little girl laughed with pure joy. "This is the best party ever," Eliska declared. The young woman laughed too. "I agree," she said. Then she looked at Thomas. "I am Katerina," she said. "Thomas," he replied. "I know," she said, glancing at his name tag. "I am glad to meet you, Thomas. Thank you for dancing with this lovely young lady. She needed someone kind." The music continued to play. The three of them danced together, an unlikely trio that made no sense in the rigid social structure of the room. An old janitor, a billionaire's daughter, and a lonely little girl. But in that moment, none of those labels mattered. They were just three people sharing a dance. Thomas noticed that other people in the room were starting to smile. The disapproving stares had softened. Some people even looked touched. Eliska's mother had finally noticed her daughter and was watching with tears in her eyes. She did not rush over to pull Eliska away. She just watched, her hand over her heart. The song came to an end. The three of them stopped dancing. Eliska hugged Thomas around the waist. "Thank you," she said. "That was wonderful." Thomas felt his own eyes grow damp. He patted her head gently. "Thank you for asking me, Eliska. You made an old man very happy." Katerina extended her hand to Thomas for a formal handshake. "It was an honor to dance with you," she said. Thomas shook her hand, overwhelmed by the gesture. "The honor was mine," he managed to say. Eliska ran back to her mother, who scooped her up in a hug. The little girl was chattering excitedly about her dance. Katerina smiled at Thomas one more time, then walked back to her father, who was standing at the edge of the crowd. Mr. Svoboda was watching Thomas with an unreadable expression. Thomas felt a jolt of fear. This was his boss's boss's boss. The owner of everything. Had he overstepped? Would there be consequences? But then Mr. Svoboda did something unexpected. He raised his champagne glass slightly in Thomas's direction. A small gesture, almost imperceptible. But it was there, a nod of acknowledgement, perhaps even respect. Thomas, not knowing what else to do, nodded back. Then he quietly returned to his cleaning cart. His hands were shaking. He gripped the handle of the cart to steady himself. What had just happened? He had danced with a child and a billionaire's daughter in the middle of an elegant party. He had been seen, truly seen, not as the invisible janitor, but as a person, as someone worthy of dancing with, as someone worthy of respect. The party continued around him, but Thomas felt like he was moving through a dream. He went through the motions of his work, emptying trash, wiping tables, but his mind was somewhere else. He kept replaying the dance in his head. The feeling of Eliska's small hand in his, the sound of her laughter, the way Katerina had looked at him with genuine warmth, the way for just a few minutes the walls between their worlds had dissolved. He did not know it yet, but that dance had set something in motion, something that would change not just his life, but the lives of many people in that building. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create ripples that spread far beyond what we can see. Sometimes a simple dance between unlikely partners can remind people of what truly matters. That night, as Thomas rode the bus home in the dark, he looked out the window at the city lights and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Not hope for wealth or status or recognition. Just hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still goodness in the world. That maybe people could still surprise you. That maybe it was never too late to be seen. The next morning, Thomas woke up with a strange feeling in his chest. It took him a moment to identify it. Lightness. For the first time in years, he did not feel the usual heavy weight of loneliness pressing down on him. He got out of bed and followed his morning routine. But something was different. He caught himself humming while making coffee. He had not hummed in, he could not remember how long. The memory of the dance played in his mind like a favorite song. Eliska's laughter, Katerina's kind eyes, the way people had smiled instead of frowned. It had been real. It had happened. He arrived at work at his usual time and went down to the basement office. Marta was already there, and the moment she saw him, her face broke into a huge smile. "Thomas Novak," she said, shaking her head in amazement. "You are famous." "What do you mean?" he asked, confused. Marta pulled out her phone and showed him the screen. Someone had recorded the dance last night and posted it online. The video had been shared thousands of times already. Thomas stared at the small screen. There he was, dancing with Eliska and Katerina. The image quality was not perfect, but you could clearly see the joy on all their faces. The comments below the video were overwhelming. People were calling it beautiful, heartwarming, touching. Some people were crying, they said. Many were asking who the janitor was and praising him for his kindness. Thomas felt his face flush. "I did not know anyone was recording," he said quietly. "Does it matter?" Marta asked gently. "Look at how many people you touched. Look at what you did. All you did was be kind to a child. And somehow that simple act reminded thousands of people that goodness still exists." Thomas did not know how to process this information. He had lived in invisibility for so long that being seen by thousands of strangers felt overwhelming. Victor arrived and immediately rushed over to Thomas. "Mr. Novak, you are all over social media. My friends are sharing your video. They are saying you are a hero." "I am not a hero," Thomas protested. "I just danced with a little girl." "That is exactly why people love it," Victor said. "Because you did not think about yourself. You did not think about the rules or what people might say. You just saw a lonely child and made her happy. That is what a hero does." Thomas shook his head, but he could not help smiling a little. Victor was young and idealistic. He saw the world in simple terms, good and bad, heroes and villains. Thomas knew life was more complicated than that. But maybe, just maybe, Victor had a point. Maybe small acts of kindness were heroic in their own way. The three of them went about their work, but the atmosphere was different. People who usually ignored them now stopped to smile. A secretary on the 15th floor recognized Thomas and told him the video had made her cry happy tears. A businessman shook his hand in the elevator and thanked him for reminding people what mattered. Thomas was deeply uncomfortable with the attention, but he tried to accept it graciously. Around noon, something unexpected happened. The phone in the maintenance office rang. Marta answered it, listened for a moment, then her eyes went wide. She looked at Thomas. "It is for you," she said, her voice strange. "It is Mr. Svoboda's assistant. She wants you to come to the executive floor." Thomas felt his stomach drop. This was it, the consequences he had feared. Mr. Svoboda had probably been pressured by other executives who thought the dance was inappropriate. Thomas would be let go, told that he had overstepped his boundaries. He had been foolish to think that one moment of connection could bridge the gap between their worlds. Marta saw the fear in his face. "Do not assume the worst," she said gently. "Just go and see what they want." Thomas nodded and took off his work gloves. He rode the elevator up to the 55th floor, where the executive offices were located. He had only been up here a handful of times, usually to clean late at night when everyone had gone home. The elevator doors opened to reveal a reception area with polished marble floors and modern art on the walls. A young woman sat behind a sleek desk. She looked up as Thomas approached. "Mr. Novak," she said with a warm smile. "Thank you for coming up. Mr. Svoboda would like to speak with you. Please follow me." She led him down a hallway lined with photographs of the company's history. At the end of the hall was a large wooden door. She knocked once, then opened it. Thomas found himself standing at the entrance to an enormous office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the entire city. Mr. Svoboda stood by the windows, his back to the door. "Thank you, Lenka," he said to his assistant. "Please close the door." Lenka left, and suddenly Thomas was alone with the billionaire. His heart pounded in his chest. Mr. Svoboda turned around. He was a tall man, probably in his early 60s, with grey hair and sharp eyes. He wore an expensive suit and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had built an empire. He looked at Thomas for a long moment. "Please, sit down," he said, gesturing to a chair. Thomas sat carefully, feeling completely out of place in the luxurious office. Mr. Svoboda sat down across from him, not behind his desk, but in the chair next to Thomas. It was a gesture that somehow made the conversation feel less intimidating. "I suppose you know why I called you here," Mr. Svoboda said. Thomas swallowed hard. "I can explain about last night," he started. "I did not mean to cause any disruption. I know the party was for important guests, and I should have stayed in the background, but the little girl asked, and I could not say no to her. She reminded me of my daughter when she was young, and I just wanted to make her happy. I understand if you need to let me go. I will clear out my things quietly." Mr. Svoboda held up his hand. "Stop," he said. "You think I called you here to fire you?" Thomas nodded miserably. "Why would I fire you?" Mr. Svoboda asked. "You did nothing wrong. In fact, you did something remarkably right." Thomas looked up in surprise. "What do you mean?" Mr. Svoboda leaned back in his chair. "Last night, my daughter Katerina came to my office after the party. Do you know what she told me? She said that dancing with you and that little girl was the most genuine moment she had experienced in months. She said that in a room full of people trying to impress each other, you were the only person who was truly present, truly kind, truly human." Mr. Svoboda paused, looking out the window at the city below. "She was right," he continued. "I have spent 30 years building this company. I have made more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have power and influence. But somewhere along the way, I forgot something important. I forgot that success means nothing if you lose your humanity in the process." Thomas did not know what to say. He had never expected to have a conversation like this with someone like Mr. Svoboda. The billionaire looked back at him. "That video of you dancing has been viewed by over 1 million people now," he said. "Do you know what people are saying? They are saying they want to work for a company that values people like you. They are saying they are inspired. Some are even saying they cried because it reminded them of what kindness looks like." Thomas felt overwhelmed. "I was just being myself," he said quietly. "Exactly," Mr. Svoboda replied. "And that is what made it so powerful. You were not trying to impress anyone. You were not looking for recognition or reward. You simply saw someone who needed kindness, and you gave it. That is the kind of person I want representing my company." Thomas blinked. "Representing your company? What do you mean?" Mr. Svoboda smiled, and for the first time, Thomas saw warmth in the man's eyes. "I have a proposition for you, Mr. Novak. But first, I need to ask you some questions. Tell me about yourself. Who are you when you are not cleaning my building?" Thomas hesitated. He was not used to people asking about his life, especially not people like Mr. Svoboda. But something in the man's expression told him this was a genuine question, not just polite small talk. So Thomas began to speak. He told Mr. Svoboda about his years as a teacher, about how much he had loved literature and sharing it with young people, about the joy of watching students discover the power of words. He talked about Marie, his wife, and how they had built a modest but happy life together. He spoke about Anna, his daughter, and how proud he was of her, even though they rarely spoke anymore. He explained how Marie's death had shattered his world, how the school closing had taken away his purpose, how he had ended up cleaning buildings just to survive. He talked about the loneliness of the past 10 years, but also about the small moments of grace he had found. A kind word from Marta, Victor asking for advice, the satisfaction of doing his work well, even when no one noticed. As Thomas spoke, Mr. Svoboda listened intently. He did not interrupt. He did not check his phone. He simply listened the way people rarely do anymore. When Thomas finished, there was a long silence. Then Mr. Svoboda spoke. "You were a teacher," he said thoughtfully. "That explains it." "Explains what?" Thomas asked. "Why you have such natural dignity," Mr. Svoboda replied. "Teaching is one of the most important professions in the world, yet we treat teachers terribly. We pay them too little and respect them even less. It is a crime." Mr. Svoboda stood up and walked to the window. "My father was a factory worker," he said. "He worked 16-hour days to feed our family. He never complained. He taught me the value of hard work and integrity. Everything I have built, I built on the foundation he gave me. But somewhere along the way, I think I forgot those lessons. I forgot to see the factory workers, the janitors, the people who make everything run. I forgot that they are just as important as the executives. Maybe more important." He turned back to Thomas. "You reminded me of that last night, not with words, but with actions. And now I want to do something about it." Thomas waited, unsure what was coming. "Here is my proposition," Mr. Svoboda said. "I want to create a new position in this company. A cultural ambassador, if you will. Someone who can help us remember what truly matters. Someone who can bridge the gap between the executive floor and the basement. Someone who embodies the values we claim to have, but often forget to practice. I want that person to be you." Thomas stared at him. "I do not understand," he said. "What would I do?" "You would do what you already do," Mr. Svoboda explained. "Be kind. Be present. Be human. But you would also help me change the culture of this company. You would work with our Human Resources Department to develop programs that honor all employees, not just the ones in corner offices. You would share your story to inspire others. You would be a living reminder that every person in this building matters." Thomas felt dizzy. "This cannot be real," he said. "Why me? I am just an old janitor." "You are not just anything," Mr. Svoboda said firmly. "You are a man who maintained his dignity and kindness, despite years of hardship. You are a man who sees children when others see inconvenience. You are a man who dances when others worry about appearances. That is exactly who I need." Thomas tried to process what he was hearing. This felt like a dream. Things like this did not happen to people like him. "What about my cleaning duties?" he asked. "We will hire someone to replace you," Mr. Svoboda said. "You will have an office on this floor, a proper salary, benefits, the respect you deserve." Thomas thought about Marta and Victor in the basement. He thought about the morning routine he had followed for years. He thought about how strange it would feel to wear a suit instead of a grey uniform. It felt wrong, somehow, like he would be abandoning the world he knew. "Can I think about it?" he asked. Mr. Svoboda smiled. "Of course. Take all the time you need. But Thomas, I want you to know something. This is not charity. This is not me feeling sorry for you. This is me recognizing that you have something valuable to offer, and I would be a fool not to ask for your help." Thomas nodded slowly. He stood up to leave, his mind spinning. Mr. Svoboda walked him to the door. "Thank you for coming up," he said. "And thank you for last night. You gave my daughter a gift. You reminded her that not everyone in the world is transactional, that some people still lead with their hearts. That means more to me than you know." Thomas shook the offered hand. "Thank you for listening," he said. "That is a gift too." He rode the elevator back down to the basement in a daze. When he walked into the maintenance office, Marta and Victor immediately rushed over. "What happened?" Marta asked. "Are you okay? Did he fire you?" Thomas sat down heavily in his chair. "He did not fire me," he said. "He offered me a job. A different job." Victor's eyes went wide. "What kind of job?" Thomas explained the offer as best he could. When he finished, Marta and Victor sat in stunned silence. "That is amazing," Victor finally said. "You have to say yes." "Do I?" Thomas asked. He looked around the small basement office. "This is my world. You are my friends. What if I do not belong up there on the executive floor? What if I fail?" "You will not fail," Marta said firmly. "You are the kindest, wisest person I know. If anyone can help change this company, it is you." "But what about you two?" Thomas asked. "What about our team down here?" "We will be fine," Marta assured him. "They will hire someone new. We will teach them the ropes. But Thomas, this is your chance to make a real difference. Your chance to show the world that people like us matter. You cannot turn that down because you are comfortable here." Victor nodded eagerly. "Mr. Novak, you always tell me to take opportunities when they come. You tell me to believe in myself. Now you need to take your own advice." Thomas looked at these two people who had become his family over the years. They were right. He knew they were right. But accepting the offer meant stepping into the unknown. It meant being visible in a way he had never been before. It meant risking failure and judgment. But maybe it also meant honoring Marie's memory by living fully again. Maybe it meant showing Anna that her father still had something to offer the world. Maybe it meant proving that it was never too late to start a new chapter. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Thomas went through his cleaning duties mechanically, while his mind wrestled with the decision. By the time his shift ended, he had not reached a conclusion. He rode the bus home in silence, watching the city lights flicker past. When he reached his small apartment, he made himself dinner and sat at his tiny table. The photograph of Marie looked back at him from its frame. He picked it up and held it gently. "What should I do?" he whispered to her image. "What would you tell me?" He knew what she would say. Marie had always been braver than him. She had always pushed him to try new things, to take risks, to believe in himself. She would tell him to say yes. She would tell him that hiding was not the same as being safe. She would tell him that the world needed more kindness, and if he had a chance to spread it further, he should take that chance. Thomas set the photo down and picked up his phone. He found Anna's number and stared at it for a long moment. They had not spoken in 2 months. He pressed call. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. "Hello?" Anna's voice sounded surprised. "Papa, is everything okay?" "Yes," he said. "Everything is fine. I just wanted to hear your voice." There was a pause. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "You never call." "I know," he said quietly. "I am sorry about that." I just wanted to tell you something. Something happened, and I need your advice." He told her about the dance, about the video, about Mr. Svoboda's offer. As he spoke, he heard Anna's breathing change. When he finished, there was a long silence. "Papa," she finally said, and her voice was thick with emotion. "You danced. You have not danced since Mama died." "I know," Thomas said softly. "It felt right in that moment. The little girl reminded me of you when you were young." Anna was quiet for a moment. "Papa," she said, her voice breaking. "I am so sorry." "Sorry for what?" he asked. "For leaving you alone, for not calling more, for building my life so far away that I forgot you were still living yours. I thought I needed distance from the grief, but I left you drowning in it." "You did what you needed to do," Thomas said gently. "I never blamed you for that." "But I blamed myself," Anna whispered. "Every day I blame myself." She was crying now. Thomas felt his own tears come. "Anna, listen to me," he said. "You gave me a reason to keep going. Knowing you were out there, building a good life, being happy, that was enough. That is still enough." "But Papa, you are all alone," she said. "No," he replied. "I have friends. I have work. I have memories. And now I have this strange opportunity that I do not know what to do with." "Tell me about the offer again," Anna said, composing herself. Thomas explained in more detail. When he finished, Anna was quiet for a long moment. "Papa," she finally said, "you have to say yes." "Do I?" he asked. "Yes," she said firmly. "You have spent 10 years making yourself small, making yourself invisible. This is your chance to step back into the light. Mama would want that. I want that. But I am afraid," he admitted. "Of what?" she asked. "Of failing, of not being good enough, of people realizing I am just an old man who cleans floors." "You are not just anything," Anna said, echoing Mr. Svoboda's words. "You are my father. You are the man who taught me that kindness costs nothing but means everything. You are the man who read me stories every night and made me believe in magic. You are the man who held our family together even when everything was falling apart. That man is more than good enough." Thomas wiped his eyes. "When did you become so wise?" he asked. "I learned from the best," she replied. He could hear the smile in her voice. "Papa, I want to send you something. Check your email tomorrow." "What is it?" he asked. "You will see," she said. "And Papa?" "Yes?" "I love you. I know I do not say it enough, but I love you so much. I am proud to be your daughter." Thomas could barely speak through his tears. "I love you too, Anna, more than you know." They talked for a few more minutes. Anna told him about his grandson, about her work, about her plans to visit soon. Really visit, not just a quick weekend. Thomas promised to think seriously about Mr. Svoboda's offer. When they hung up, Thomas sat in his small apartment, feeling something shift inside him. The loneliness that had been his constant companion for 10 years felt lighter somehow. Not gone, but manageable. He looked at Marie's photograph again. "I think I'm going to say yes," he told her. "I think it is time to stop hiding." That night, Thomas slept better than he had in years. When he woke up the next morning, he felt different, stronger, more certain. He went through his morning routine, but this time when he looked in the mirror, he did not see an old man defeated by life. He saw someone who still had something to offer, someone who could make a difference. He arrived at work and went straight to the maintenance office. Marta and Victor were waiting for him. "Well," Marta asked, "have you decided?" Thomas nodded. "I am going to accept the offer." Victor let out a whoop of joy and hugged him. Marta smiled with tears in her eyes. "Good," she said. "It is about time the world saw what we have always seen." Thomas called Mr. Svoboda's assistant and asked to schedule a meeting. An hour later, he was back on the executive floor. Mr. Svoboda greeted him with a warm handshake. "You have made your decision?" he asked. "Yes," Thomas said. "I accept your offer." "Excellent," Mr. Svoboda said, beaming. "Welcome to the team. Let me introduce you to some people." Over the next hour, Thomas met with the Human Resources Director, a sharp woman named Helena, who explained his new role in detail. He would work with her department to develop employee engagement programs. He would share his story at company meetings and events. He would be a consultant on workplace culture. The salary was more than 3 times what he made as a janitor. There would be health benefits, retirement contributions, paid vacation. Things Thomas had not had in years. It felt surreal. Helena showed him to his new office. It was small compared to the executive suites, but to Thomas it looked enormous. A desk, a computer, a window with a view, bookshelves along one wall. "This is yours," Helena said. "Decorate it however you like. Start on Monday. That gives you the weekend to prepare." Thomas stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. "Thank you," he managed to say. Helena smiled kindly. "No, thank you. You are exactly what this company needs." Thomas spent the rest of the day finishing his duties as a janitor. It felt strange knowing these would be his last days pushing a cleaning cart. He said goodbye to the familiar spaces he had cleaned for years. The hallways, the offices, the bathrooms. Each one held memories. Some sad, some mundane, but all part of his story. That evening, Thomas checked his email on the old computer in his apartment. There was a message from Anna. The subject line simply said, "This is you." He opened it. Inside was the video of the dance. Anna had written below it, "Papa, I watched this 20 times today. I showed it to everyone at my office. They all cried." Do you know what I see when I watch this? I see a man who never lost his kindness despite losing so much. I see a man who sees people, really sees them, when the rest of the world looks away. I see my father, the best man I know. I am flying home next month. I want my son to meet his grandfather properly. I want him to know the man in this video. I love you. Thomas read the message 3 times. Then he watched the video. Really watched it. He saw himself through other people's eyes for the first time. He saw an old man in a worn uniform dancing with a child and a billionaire's daughter. He saw kindness made visible. He saw proof that small acts matter. He saw that maybe, just maybe, he had been wrong about being invisible. Maybe he had always been seen by the people who mattered, the children, the martyrs and victors of the world, the Annas. He just had not believed he was worth seeing. The weekend passed quickly. Thomas bought a simple suit for his new job. Nothing fancy, but clean and professional. He felt strange wearing it, like he was pretending to be someone he was not. But Anna's words echoed in his mind. You have spent 10 years making yourself small. It is time to step back into the light. On Monday morning, Thomas arrived at Riverside Tower and rode the elevator to the executive floor for his first day in his new role. Helena met him and walked him through his schedule. He would spend the morning in meetings, learning about current company initiatives. In the afternoon, he would begin working on his first project. What project? Thomas asked. We want to create a mentorship program, Helena explained. Pairing executives with employees from different departments, not for career advancement necessarily, but for human connection, to break down the barriers between floors and positions. We think you would be perfect to design it. Thomas felt a flutter of anxiety. I have never designed a program before, he said. You have lived the need for one, Helena replied. That makes you the expert. The morning meetings were overwhelming. So many people, so much information, so many acronyms and business terms Thomas did not understand. He felt out of his depth. But then he remembered something he used to tell his students. You do not have to know everything. You just have to be willing to learn and ask questions. So he asked questions, lots of them. Some of the executives seemed annoyed by his questions. They were used to people nodding and agreeing. But Helena encouraged him. Your questions are exactly what we need, she said. They force us to explain things clearly instead of hiding behind jargon. By lunchtime, Thomas was exhausted. He went to the executive dining room, another new experience. The food was catered, elegant, nothing like the sandwiches he used to eat in the basement. He sat alone at a small table, feeling out of place. Then someone sat down across from him. It was Katerina, Mr. Svoboda's daughter. Hello, Thomas, she said warmly. How is your first day going? Overwhelming, he admitted. She laughed. I remember my first day working here. I felt like everyone was speaking a foreign language. It gets easier. May I ask you something? Thomas said. Of course, she replied. Why did you join our dance that night? What made you do it? Katerina looked thoughtful. She set down her fork and met his eyes. Honestly, she said, I was tired. Tired of what? Thomas asked. Of pretending, she replied. I have spent my whole life at events like that party. Everyone performing, everyone trying to impress each other, everyone wearing masks. Then I saw you dancing with that little girl, and you were not performing. You were just being genuine. It was like seeing water in a desert. I had to be part of it. Thomas nodded slowly. I understand that feeling, he said. The exhaustion of pretending. Katerina smiled sadly. My father built an empire, she said. I am proud of him. But I grew up in a world where everything is transactional. People want to be my friend because of my last name. They want to date me because of my father's money. They want to hire me because of connections. Nobody just wants to know me as Katerina. Just a person. That must be very lonely, Thomas said. It is, she admitted. That is why that dance meant so much to me. For 3 minutes, I was just someone dancing, not the billionaire's daughter, just someone sharing a moment of joy with a kind man and a sweet child. Thomas felt a wave of compassion for this young woman. He had always assumed wealthy people had easy lives, but loneliness came in many forms. Being invisible was one kind of loneliness. Being seen only for what you represented was another. Can I tell you something? Katerina asked. "Of course," Thomas said. "I asked my father to give you this job," she said. "I told him we needed someone like you in this company. Someone real. Someone who has not forgotten how to be human." "So this was your idea," Thomas said, surprised. "Partly," Katerina replied, "but he would not have listened if he did not see it too. You touched something in him that night, reminded him of his own father, of where he came from, of what matters." They talked for the rest of lunch. Katerina told him about her struggles to find meaning in her privileged life, about her desire to do something that mattered, about feeling trapped by expectations. Thomas listened the way he had always listened to his students, with full attention and without judgment. By the time lunch ended, Katerina looked lighter. "Thank you for listening," she said. "People do not usually listen to me. They usually just want something from me." "I do not want anything," Thomas said simply, "except maybe to understand this strange new world I find myself in." Katerina laughed. "I will help you navigate it," she promised. "And maybe you can help me remember what is real and what is just performance." They shook hands and parted ways. Thomas went back to his office and spent the afternoon working on the mentorship program. He thought about what had helped him over the years, what had given him strength. It was always connection, the moments when someone truly saw him, when Marta brought him soup when he was sick, when Victor asked for his advice, when a student came back years later to tell him how much his class had meant. Those moments of genuine human connection had kept him going. That was what the company needed. Not networking, not career advancement strategies. Just opportunities for people to see each other as human beings. He drafted a proposal. The program would pair employees from different departments for monthly conversations, not about work, about life, about dreams and fears and hopes, about who they were beyond their job titles. It was simple, maybe too simple. But Thomas believed that simple was often best. He sent the proposal to Helena and waited nervously for feedback. Within an hour, she called him. "Thomas, this is beautiful," she said. "It is exactly what we need. Can you present it at the leadership meeting on Friday?" Thomas felt his stomach drop. Present it? In front of all the executives? "Yes," Helena said. "Your voice needs to be heard. This is your idea. You should be the one to share it." Thomas wanted to say no. Public speaking had never been his strength. But he remembered his conversation with Anna. "Time to stop making yourself small." "All right," he agreed. "I will do it." The rest of the week passed in a blur of preparation. Thomas worked on his presentation every evening. He practiced in front of his bathroom mirror. He called Anna for encouragement. She listened to him rehearse and gave him feedback. "You sound too apologetic," she said. "Stop saying maybe and perhaps. Say it with confidence. This is a good idea. Own it." Thomas tried to take her advice, but confidence did not come naturally to him. Not anymore. Friday arrived too quickly. Thomas put on his suit and rode the elevator to the top-floor conference room. When he walked in, he saw a long table surrounded by executives. Mr. Svoboda sat at the head. Katerina was there too, along with a dozen people Thomas did not know. They all looked at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Helena introduced him and invited him to present. Thomas stood at the front of the room, his hands shaking slightly. He looked at the faces staring back at him. Some were kind, some were impatient. Some looked like they had already decided his idea was worthless. He almost lost his nerve. But then he saw Katerina give him an encouraging nod. He saw Mr. Svoboda lean forward with genuine interest, and he remembered why he was here. Not for himself, for all the invisible people in the building, for the martyrs and victors who deserved to be seen. He began to speak. "My name is Thomas Novak," he said. "2 weeks ago, I was a janitor in this building. Most of you never noticed me. That is not a criticism. It is simply the truth. I was invisible. But being invisible taught me something important. It taught me that we all exist in separate worlds within this building. The executives up here, the staff in the middle floors, the maintenance crew in the basement. We pass each other every day, but we never truly see each other. We never connect as human beings." He continued, his voice growing stronger. "I am proposing a mentorship program that bridges those worlds, not to advance careers, but to advance understanding, to remind us that we are all people with stories, with struggles, with dreams. The program is simple. Once a month, 2 employees from different departments meet for coffee. They talk about their lives. They listen to each other. They see each other. That is all." There was silence in the room. Then one of the executives, a stern man named Robert, spoke up. "With all due respect," he said, and his tone suggested no respect at all, "we are a business. We do not have time for feel-good programs that do not impact the bottom line. How does this help us make money?" Thomas looked at Robert. He felt a flash of his old teaching instinct, the ability to address difficult questions without defensiveness. "It helps you keep good people," Thomas said. "It helps you attract talent. It helps you build a company culture that people want to be part of. But more than that, it helps you remember that your employees are human beings, and when you treat people like human beings, they give you their best. Not because they have to, but because they want to." Robert frowned. "That sounds nice, but do you have any data to support these claims?" Thomas shook his head. "No data," he admitted. "Just 10 years of watching people suffer in silence because nobody saw them. Just a lifetime of believing that kindness matters. Just one dance that reminded millions of people what human connection looks like. You can dismiss that as sentiment if you want. But sentiment built the loyalty that built this company. Mr. Svoboda's father understood that. Maybe it is time we remembered." The room was very quiet. Mr. Svoboda stood up. "I think we have heard enough," he said. "Thomas, thank you for your presentation. We will discuss this and get back to you." Thomas nodded and left the room, his heart pounding. He had no idea if he had succeeded or failed. He went back to his office and sat down, emotionally exhausted. An hour later, there was a knock on his door. Katerina came in, smiling. "You did it," she said. "Did what?" Thomas asked. "You stood up to Robert. Nobody stands up to Robert. He is the most intimidating person in the company." "I did not mean to be disrespectful," Thomas said, worried. "You were not disrespectful," Katerina assured him. "You were honest. That is what we need. Robert is brilliant at business, but he has forgotten how to see people. You reminded him." "Did they approve the program?" Thomas asked. Katerina's smile widened. "They did not just approve it. My father insisted it start immediately. He wants you to personally train the first round of mentors. He said your presentation was the most important thing he has heard in this building in 20 years. Thomas felt tears prick his eyes. "Really?" he whispered. "Really," Katerina confirmed. You are changing things, Thomas. One honest conversation at a time. That evening, Thomas called Anna and told her everything. She laughed and cried and told him how proud she was. Then she said something that struck him deeply. "Papa, you have been a teacher your whole life. You just have a different classroom now." Thomas hung up and looked around his small office. She was right. He was still teaching, still helping people see things they had missed, still believing that understanding and kindness could change the world. The only difference was the setting. As he packed up to go home, Thomas realized something profound. For the first time in 10 years, he felt like himself again. Not the broken version of himself that grief had created, but the real Thomas. The one who believed people were worth investing in. The one who saw potential where others saw problems. The one who knew that every person deserved to be seen. He was not invisible anymore. And now he was going to make sure nobody else felt invisible either. The work had just begun. The mentorship program launched 3 weeks later. Thomas spent those weeks training the first group of participants. He taught them how to listen without judgment, how to ask meaningful questions, how to create space for vulnerability. The response was overwhelming. Over 200 employees signed up, executives paired with janitors, marketing directors paired with security guards, the finance team paired with the cafeteria staff. Every Friday afternoon, the building's coffee shop filled with unlikely pairs engaged in deep conversation. Thomas walked among them, listening. He heard a senior vice president tell a maintenance worker about his fear of disappointing his children. He heard a receptionist share her dream of becoming a writer with a lawyer who had given up his own creative ambitions. He saw walls coming down. He saw people really seeing each other for the first time. The program was changing the culture of the company exactly as Mr. Svoboda had hoped. But something else was happening too. Something Tomas had not anticipated. People were asking about him, not just in the building, but beyond it. The video of the dance had continued to spread. News outlets picked up the story. A local television station asked to interview him. Then a national morning show called. Thomas was reluctant. He did not want fame or attention. He just wanted to do good work. But Helena convinced him. "Your story inspires people," she said. "You have a platform now. Use it to spread the message further." So Thomas agreed to a few interviews. He talked about kindness and dignity and seeing people. He talked about how small acts can create big ripples. He talked about the importance of treating everyone with respect, regardless of their position or wealth. The response was incredible. Letters poured in from around the country, teachers who felt undervalued, service workers who felt invisible, elderly people who felt forgotten, all of them thanking Thomas for reminding the world that they mattered. It was humbling and overwhelming. One morning, 6 weeks after his first day in the new role, Thomas arrived at his office to find an envelope on his desk. It was expensive stationery, cream-colored with gold trim. Inside was a handwritten letter. He did not recognize the handwriting. He began to read. "Dear Mr. Novak," the letter began, "you do not know me, but I know you. Or rather, I knew you. 25 years ago, you were my literature teacher at Central High School. I was in your 3rd period class. I was a difficult student, angry at the world, barely passing. My home life was chaos. My father drank. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. I had no hope for the future. I assumed I would end up like my father, angry and broken. But you saw something in me. You kept me after class one day and asked me about my life, not in an intrusive way, just in a way that said you cared. I told you things I had never told anyone. You listened. Then you gave me a book. You said it was about someone who had overcome difficult circumstances. You said you thought I might relate to it. That book changed my life. I read it in one night. Then I read everything else by that author. Then I read everything I could get my hands on. Reading became my escape and my education. It showed me there was a world beyond my circumstances. It showed me I could be more than my upbringing. You probably do not remember this. You probably had dozens of students like me. But I remember. I went to college on a scholarship. I became a social worker. I have spent the past 20 years helping kids like I was. Kids who need someone to see them, to believe in them, to give them a book and a chance. I did all of that because you did it for me first. The letter continued. I saw the video of you dancing with that little girl. I recognized you immediately. After all these years, you are still the same man, still seeing people others overlook, still offering kindness without expectation of return. I wanted you to know that you have been changing lives for decades, not just now, not just because of one viral video. You have always mattered. You have always made a difference. I am not the only one. I have stayed in touch with several people from our class. We talk about you sometimes, about how you were the one teacher who really cared, how you made us feel like we were worth something. We all went on to do good things with our lives. Teachers, nurses, counselors, parents who break cycles of pain. We all carry a piece of your kindness with us. So thank you, Mr. Novak. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for believing in me when I did not believe in myself. Thank you for showing me that one person's kindness can change the trajectory of a life. You are my hero. You always have been. The letter was signed Martin Kovac. Thomas read it 3 times. Tears streamed down his face. He did remember Martin, a skinny kid with hollow eyes who sat in the back row. Thomas had given him a copy of a novel about resilience. He had not known if it made any difference. He had lost touch with Martin after the school closed. Now, 25 years later, he knew. It had made all the difference. Thomas sat in his office crying like he had not cried since Marie died. But these were not tears of grief. These were tears of gratitude, of understanding, of revelation. He had spent 10 years thinking his teaching career had ended in failure, thinking he had wasted those 25 years because the school closed and the system failed. But he had been wrong. Those years had not been wasted. Every student he had taught, every small kindness he had offered, every moment of genuine care had mattered. The impact had just been invisible to him. He thought about all the other Martins he must have taught, the ones who never wrote letters, the ones who went on to live good lives, carrying forward the kindness they had received. The ripples spreading outward in ways he would never see. This realization shifted something fundamental in Thomas's understanding of his own life. He had thought the dance was the beginning of his impact, the moment when he finally mattered. But it was not the beginning at all. It was just the moment when his decades of impact became visible. He had always mattered. His life had always had meaning. He just had not been able to see it. There was a knock on his door. Thomas quickly wiped his eyes. "Come in," he called. Mr. Svoboda entered. He looked at Thomas's tear-stained face with concern. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Thomas handed him the letter. Mr. Svoboda read it slowly. When he finished, he looked up at Thomas with something like awe in his eyes. "Do you understand what this means?" Mr. Svoboda asked. "I think so," Thomas said quietly. "It means I have been wrong about my life. Wrong about what matters. Wrong about when I started making a difference." "You have been making a difference your entire life," Mr. Svoboda said. "This letter proves it, and it makes me realize something. We have been thinking about this program too small." "What do you mean?" Thomas asked. "The mentorship program is working beautifully here," Mr. Svoboda explained. "But why stop with our company? Why not expand it? Why not create a foundation that brings this model to the other companies, schools, communities? Why not make this your legacy?" Thomas stared at him. "A foundation? I do not know anything about running a foundation." "You do not need to know how to run it," Mr. Svoboda said. "We can hire people for that. What you need to do is be the heart of it. The teacher, the guide, the reminder of what we are trying to accomplish. Thomas, you have a gift. You see people. You help them see each other. That gift should not be limited to one building. It should reach as far as possible." Thomas felt overwhelmed. This was bigger than anything he had imagined. "I need to think about this," he said. "Of course," Mr. Svoboda replied. "But while you think, I want you to know something. That dance at the party, it did not just change your life. It changed mine, too." "How?" Thomas asked. "It reminded me why I started this company," Mr. Svoboda said. "My father worked himself to death in a factory where nobody knew his name. I built this company, promising myself I would create a place where people were valued. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that promise. I started valuing profits over people, efficiency over humanity. Then I watched you dance with my daughter and a child, and I remembered. You did not set out to teach me anything that night. You were just being yourself. But sometimes that is the most powerful lesson of all." Mr. Svoboda stood up to leave. "Think about the foundation," he said. "But know this, whatever you decide, you have already changed this company forever. You have changed me forever." After he left, Thomas sat alone with Martin's letter and his own thoughts. His whole understanding of his life had been rewritten in a single morning. He was not an old janitor who got lucky with one viral moment. He was a teacher who had been teaching his whole life in different classrooms. The school, the building, the executive offices, the world that was now watching. Every interaction had been a lesson. Every kindness had been a seed planted. Some seeds grew visibly, like Martin. Others grew in secret, in ways he would never know. But they all mattered. They had always mattered. He just had not had faith enough to believe it. Thomas pulled out his phone and called Anna. When she answered, he said, "I need to tell you something I should have said years ago." "What, Papa?" she asked. "Your mother's death broke me," he said. "But you saved me. Just by existing. Just by being out there in the world, carrying forward the love we gave you. I spent 10 years thinking I had lost everything, but I never lost what mattered most. The ability to love. The willingness to see people. The belief that kindness matters. Marie gave me those gifts. I gave them to you. You will give them to your son. And that is how we live forever. Not in fame or wealth or accomplishments, but in the ripples of kindness that spread through generations. Anna was crying. "Papa," she whispered, "I am coming home next week, earlier than planned. I need to see you. I need my son to know you." "Good," Thomas said. "I would like that very much." When he hung up, Thomas looked out his office window at the city below. Somewhere out there were hundreds of people whose lives he had touched without knowing it. Students, colleagues, people who had seen him show kindness and decided to do the same. The dance had not made him matter. It had just made his mattering visible. And now he had a choice. He could stay small, content with the good work he was doing in this building. Or he could step into something larger, something that might help thousands of people feel seen. It was terrifying. But then he remembered what he had told his students so many years ago. The best things in life exist on the other side of fear. It was time to take his own advice. Thomas spent the weekend thinking about Mr. Svoboda's proposal, a foundation, a chance to spread this work beyond one building. It felt impossible and necessary at the same time. He made lists of concerns. He was 60 years old. He had no experience with non-profits. He barely understood social media, even though his video had gone viral. He was just one man with a simple idea about kindness. Was that enough to build a foundation on? But then he thought about Martin's letter, about the students whose lives had changed because one teacher cared, about Marta and Victor, who had become his family because they saw each other as human beings, about Eliska, who had asked an old janitor to dance because she saw a person, not a position. Small acts created big changes. Maybe that was exactly what the world needed. Not another complicated system or program, just permission to be kind, just reminders to see each other. On Monday morning, Thomas went to Mr. Svoboda's office. "I have decided," he said. "I want to create the foundation." Mr. Svoboda smiled broadly. "I was hoping you would say that. Let us begin." Over the next 2 weeks, Thomas was swept into a world he had never imagined. Lawyers drew up documents. Board members were recruited. A director was hired, a capable woman named Sarka, who had run successful non-profits before. Office space was secured. A website was designed. The foundation would be called The Visible Heart, a name Katerina suggested. Its mission was simple: to create programs and resources that helped people see each other's humanity across all divides of class, profession, age, and circumstance. The mentorship program from Riverside Tower would be the first offering, packaged as a toolkit that any organization could implement. But there would be more: workshops on empathetic leadership, resources for schools, community events that brought diverse people together. All of it centered on the principle that kindness and recognition were not luxuries, but necessities. Thomas worked closely with Sarka to shape the foundation's approach. She was impressed by his clarity of vision. "You know exactly what you want this to be," she told him. "How?" "I have been thinking about it my whole life," Thomas replied. "I just did not know I was thinking about it." During those 2 weeks, something else happened. Anna came home. She arrived on a Tuesday afternoon with her husband David and their son, a 4-year-old boy named Lucas. Thomas met them at the airport. When he saw Anna walking toward him, he felt his heart might burst. She looked so much like Marie. The same eyes, the same smile. She ran to him and hugged him tightly. "Papa," she whispered, "I am so sorry. It took so long." "You are here now," Thomas said. "That is what matters." Little Lucas hid behind his mother's leg. shy. Thomas knelt down slowly, his old knees protesting. "Hello, Lucas," he said gently. "I am your grandfather. Do you know what that means?" Lucas shook his head. "It means I am your mama's papa," Thomas explained, "just like your papa is your papa. And I am very, very happy to meet you." Lucas considered this. "Do you have toys?" he asked. "I do not," Thomas admitted. "But I have stories. Do you like stories?" Lucas nodded enthusiastically. "Then we will get along just fine," Thomas said. He stood up and shook David's hand. "Thank you for bringing them," he said. "Thank you for being who you are," David replied. "Anna talks about you all the time, about the lessons you taught her. I am honored to finally spend real time with you." They went back to Thomas's small apartment. Anna looked around at the modest space, at the photographs of Marie everywhere, at the simple furniture and worn carpet. She started crying. "Papa, you have been living like this all these years," she said, "while I was in a big house with everything I needed." "It is enough for me," Thomas said gently. "I do not need much." "But you deserve more," Anna insisted. "You deserve comfort and joy and—" "I have comfort," Thomas interrupted. "And I have joy now. You are here. My grandson is here. I have meaningful work. What more could I want?" Anna wiped her eyes. "We are staying for 2 weeks," she said. "I took time off work. We are not rushing this visit." "Good," Thomas said. "I want to know everything about your life, and I want Lucas to know his grandfather." Over the next few days, Thomas's apartment filled with life for the first time in a decade. Lucas's toys scattered across the floor. Anna's laughter it echoed in the small kitchen. David's presence added warmth. They cooked meals together. They told stories. They looked at old photographs. Lucas sat on Thomas's lap, while Thomas read him books, the same books he had once read to Anna. The little boy was fascinated by his grandfather's gentle voice and patient explanations. One evening, after Lucas was asleep, Anna and Thomas sat together on the small balcony. The city lights twinkled below them. "Papa," Anna said, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" he asked. "I have been angry at you," she admitted. "At me?" "Why?" "Because you disappeared," she said. "After Mama died, you were still alive. But you disappeared into grief. You stopped fighting. You stopped living. You just existed, and I could not watch it. That is why I stayed away. I could not bear to see you giving up." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "You are right," he finally said. "I did give up. Losing your mother broke something in me that I did not know how to fix. I am sorry you had to watch that. I am sorry I let you down." "You did not let me down," Anna said quickly. "I let you down." "I should have stayed. I should have helped you through it. But I was so scared. Scared I would drown in the grief too. So I ran away and called it moving forward." They sat in silence, years of unspoken pain finally spoken. Then Thomas took Anna's hand. "We both did what we needed to survive," he said. "There is no blame here. Only love. Only gratitude that we found our way back to each other." Anna leaned her head on his shoulder. "What changed?" she asked. "How did you come back to life?" Thomas thought about it. "A little girl asked me to dance," he said. And I said yes, that is all. I said yes instead of no. I let myself be seen instead of hiding. And that one small choice opened a door. Anna smiled. Mama would be so proud of you. I think she would be proud of both of us, Thomas said. You built a beautiful life. You are raising a wonderful son. You broke free from grief while I drowned in it. That took courage. Now we are both here, Anna said. Both living, both moving forward. Yes, Thomas agreed. Both moving forward. The days passed quickly. Thomas took them to see his office at Riverside Tower. Lucas was amazed by the tall building and the elevator ride to the executive floor. Anna met Mr. Svoboda and Katerina and Helena. She saw the mentorship program in action. She watched people who would never normally speak having deep conversations. She saw her father in his element, moving among them, offering gentle guidance and encouragement. This is incredible, she told him. You are changing lives here. I am just facilitating, Thomas said. They are changing their own lives. But you gave them permission, Anna replied. You showed them it was possible. That is the gift. One afternoon, Thomas took Anna and Lucas to visit Marta and Victor in the basement. He wanted them to meet the people who had kept him going during the dark years. Marta hugged Anna tightly. Your father is a saint, she said. He saved me more times than he knows. He is not a saint, Anna laughed. Trust me, I grew up with him. He is just a good man who tries his best. That is what a saint is, Victor said. Someone who keeps trying to be good, even when life is hard. They all laughed. Lucas played with Victor's flashlight while the adults talked. It struck Thomas how different his life looked now compared to 3 months ago. Then he had been alone, invisible, going through the motions of existence. Now he was surrounded by love and purpose and possibility. On Anna's last evening before flying home, the whole family went to dinner at a nice restaurant. Thomas insisted on paying, even though Anna protested that he should save his money. I have more money now than I have had in years, he said. Let me do this. Please. Over dinner, David asked Thomas about the foundation. When does it officially launch? He asked. In 2 weeks, Thomas replied. We are having an event here in the city. Companies and organizations are sending representatives to learn about the mentorship program. We are expecting about 300 people. That is amazing, David said. Are you nervous? Terrified, Thomas admitted. I will be giving a speech. I am not good at speeches. You will be wonderful, Anna assured him. Just speak from your heart, the way you always do. That is when you are most powerful. After dinner, they walked through the city streets. Lucas held Thomas's hand, chattering about everything he saw. Thomas felt a contentment he had not known was possible. This was what mattered. Connection, family, love. Everything else was just details. When they returned to the apartment, Anna helped Lucas get ready for bed. The little boy insisted that his grandfather read him one more story. Thomas sat on the edge of the bed and opened the book. As he read, he watched Lucas's eyes grow heavy. By the final page, the boy was asleep. Thomas kissed his forehead gently. Anna stood in the doorway, watching. You are going to be all right, she said softly. What do you mean? Thomas asked. This new chapter of your life, Anna explained. The foundation, the speeches, being visible. You were worried you would not be enough, but you are. You always have been. I am still scared, Thomas admitted. Good, Anna said. That means you care. That means it matters. Just promise me something. What? He asked. Promise me you will not disappear again, she said. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how overwhelming it feels. Promise me you will keep living. I promise, Thomas said. And you promise me something too. Anything, Anna replied. Promise me you will not wait so long to visit again. Promise me Lucas will grow up, knowing his grandfather. I promise, Anna said, tears in her eyes. We are family. We stay connected now. They hugged in the doorway of the small bedroom. Two people who had been lost to each other, now found. Two people who had learned that love does not end with death or distance. It just transforms, waiting patiently to be reclaimed. The next morning, Thomas took them to the airport. Saying goodbye was hard, but different than before. Before, goodbyes had felt permanent, like doors closing. This goodbye felt temporary, like a comma, not a period. They would see each other again soon. They had promised. Lucas hugged Thomas tightly around the neck. I love you, Grandpa, he said. It was the first time he had called Thomas that. Thomas felt tears spill down his cheeks. I love you too, Lucas. So very much. Anna hugged him last. Thank you, Papa, she whispered, for coming back to us. Thank you for coming back to me, he replied. As he watched them walk through security and disappear into the crowd, Thomas felt the familiar ache of separation. But underneath it was something stronger. Hope, connection, purpose. He was not alone. He would never be alone again. He had work to do, a foundation to launch, a speech to give, lives to touch, and he was ready. The scared old janitor who had danced with a little girl had become someone new, not because he had changed who he was, but because he had finally accepted who he had always been. A teacher, a father, a man who saw people and helped them see each other. That was his gift, and now he was going to share it with the world. 2 weeks until the launch event. 2 weeks to prepare. But really, he had been preparing his whole life. Everything that had happened, all the pain and loss and loneliness, had taught him what mattered. Now it was time to teach others, not from a place of wisdom or authority, but from a place of shared humanity, from a place of knowing that we are all invisible until someone chooses to see us, and that seeing each other is the most important work we can do. The morning of the foundation launch arrived cold and clear. Thomas woke at 4:30 out of habit, though he no longer needed to be at work that early. He lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, his heart racing. Today he would stand in front of 300 people and share his story. Today, the Visible Heart Foundation would officially begin its work. Today, everything he had learned about kindness and connection would be tested on a larger stage than he had ever imagined. He got up and went through his morning routine. Coffee, shower. The suit he had bought for this occasion, a simple dark blue one that Anna had helped him pick out over video call. As he dressed, he looked at Marie's photograph. Wish me luck, he whispered. I am terrified. He arrived at the hotel conference center 2 hours before the event. Sarka was already there, directing the setup crew. She saw Thomas and smiled. Ready for this? She asked, not even a little. Bit, he admitted. She laughed. Good. That means you will be authentic. Authentic is what people need. The room was large and elegant. Rows of chairs faced a small stage. Screens displayed the foundation's logo. Tables along the walls held materials about the mentorship program. Everything looked professional and official. Thomas felt like an imposter. He was just an old janitor. What business did he have standing on that stage? Helena arrived next, followed by Katerina. Then Mr. Svoboda himself, who rarely attended daytime events. He pulled Thomas aside. "I want you to know something before this begins," he said. "What?" Thomas asked. "No matter what happens today, you have already succeeded," Mr. Svoboda said. "You have already changed lives. This event is just the beginning of spreading that change further. But the change itself has already happened. You did that." "Thank you," Thomas said, his voice tight with emotion. Marta and Victor arrived wearing their best clothes. They looked uncomfortable in formal wear, the way Thomas felt. But their presence steadied him. These were his people, his friends. They understood where he came from. People began filing into the room at 9:30. Representatives from companies and schools and non-profits, journalists, local officials, more people than Thomas had expected. The room filled quickly, every seat taken, people standing along the walls. Thomas watched from backstage, his hands shaking. At 10 o'clock, Sarka stepped onto the stage and welcomed everyone. She spoke about the Foundation's mission, about the need for human connection in an increasingly disconnected world, about the power of seeing each other across the barriers that divide us. Then she introduced Mr. Svoboda. He walked onto the stage to polite applause. He spoke about how the Foundation came to be, about a dance at a corporate party that reminded him what mattered, about an old janitor who taught him more in 3 minutes than he had learned in 30 years of business. He spoke well, as wealthy men learn to do. But when he introduced Thomas, his voice cracked slightly. "This man changed my life," Mr. Svoboda said. "Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, with simple kindness, with the courage to say yes when a child asked him to dance. Please welcome Thomas Novak." The applause was loud and warm. Thomas walked onto the stage on unsteady legs. The lights were bright. The crowd was large. He could not see individual faces, just a sea of people all looking at him. His prepared speech disappeared from his mind completely. He stood at the microphone in silence. The seconds stretched out. People shifted in their seats. This was it. He was going to fail. He was going to freeze and embarrass himself and prove that he did not belong here. But then, in the front row, he saw Marta. She smiled at him and nodded. "You can do this," her expression said. "Just be yourself." Thomas took a deep breath. He forgot about the speech he had memorized. He forgot about trying to sound professional or important. He just spoke from his heart. "My name is Thomas Novak," he began. "Until 3 months ago, I was invisible. I cleaned this city's tallest building every day. I mopped floors and emptied trash and wiped down windows. I did good work. I took pride in it. But nobody saw me. Not really. I was just part of the background, like the furniture, like the walls. I thought that was my life. I thought that was all I had left." His voice grew stronger as he continued. "Then a little girl asked me to dance. That is all it took. One child who saw me as a person instead of a janitor. One simple question. Will you dance with me? And I had a choice. I could say no. I could stay invisible. I could follow the rules that say people like me do not dance at parties like that. Or I could say yes. I could be seen. I could risk judgment and consequences. I could choose connection over safety. He paused, looking out at the crowd. I said yes. And that choice changed everything. Not because it made me famous or got me a better job, but because it reminded me of something I had forgotten, that I am a person, that every person in that room was a person, that the little girl was a person, that the billionaire's daughter who joined us was a person, and for 3 minutes we were not janitor and child and heiress. We were just 3 people sharing joy. The room was completely silent. Every person leaned forward, listening. That is what this foundation is about, Thomas said. Not about programs or initiatives or corporate culture. About remembering that simple truth. We are all people. Every single one of us. The executive and the janitor. The teacher and the student. The wealthy and the poor. We all want the same things. To be seen. To be valued. To matter. The barriers between us are real. I am not naive. Class exists. Inequality exists. Some people have power and privilege, and others do not. But underneath all of that, we are human beings. And human beings need connection. We need to see each other. Really see each other. Thomas felt tears on his cheeks, but did not wipe them away. For 10 years after my wife died, I was invisible by choice, he said. I hid from the world because being seen hurt too much, but hiding did not protect me. It just made me smaller, lonelier, less alive. That little girl saved me by asking me to dance. She did not know she was saving me. She just saw someone standing alone and thought he might want to dance. That is all it takes. Seeing someone, asking a simple question, making a small gesture of kindness. That is what changes lives. Thomas continued speaking, his voice steady now. I taught literature for 25 years, he said. I thought those years ended in failure when my school closed. I thought I had wasted my life. Then a few weeks ago, I received a letter from a former student. He told me that one conversation we had, one book I gave him, changed the entire trajectory of his life. He became a social worker. He has helped hundreds of children, all because one teacher saw him and believed in him. I had no idea. For 25 years, I had no idea that my small acts of kindness were creating ripples I could not see. That is what we forget. We think our actions do not matter unless we can measure the impact, unless we can see immediate results. But most of the good we do in the world is invisible. Most of the lives we touch, we never know about. The student who remembers a kind word decades later. The stranger who pays forward the compassion they received. The child who grows up to be kind because someone was kind to them. We are all creating ripples. The question is, what kind of ripples do we want to create? He looked out at the audience, seeing individual faces now. Fear and judgment, or love and recognition. Walls and barriers, or bridges and connections. We get to choose. Every single day, every single interaction. We choose whether to see people or look through them, whether to offer kindness or withhold it, whether to build people up or tear them down. A woman in the 3rd row was crying openly. Others were nodding. Some had their hands over their hearts. Thomas felt the energy in the room shift. This was not just a speech anymore. This was a shared moment of understanding. This foundation exists because I believe we can choose better, Thomas said. I believe that despite all the pain and division in our world, despite all the ways we hurt each other, there is still more good than bad. There are still more people who want to help than harm. We just need permission to act on that impulse. We need reminders that kindness is not weakness, that seeing each other is not naive, that believing in human goodness is not foolish. It is necessary. He paused to take a sip of water. His hands had stopped shaking. The mentorship program we are sharing today is simple, he continued. 2 people from different worlds meeting for coffee, talking about their lives, listening to each other. That is all. No complicated training. No expensive materials. Just structured permission to be human together. But simple does not mean easy. It is hard to be vulnerable. It is hard to admit we have been living in bubbles. It is hard to really listen without judging or defending. This program asks people to do that hard work, and the results are beautiful. In our company, I have watched executives cry as they heard about the struggles of hourly workers. I have watched security guards share wisdom that helped vice presidents solve personal problems. I have watched people discover that the person they passed in the hallway every day for years is actually fascinating and kind and worth knowing. That is what happens when we see each other. We discover our shared humanity. We realize that our differences are far smaller than what we have in common. Thomas smiled. Some of you are probably thinking this sounds idealistic, he said. You are wondering if it actually works in the real world. I understand that skepticism. I felt it too. But I have lived this. I have watched it transform a company culture. I have seen hard-edged executives soften. I have seen minimum wage workers stand taller because someone finally acknowledged their worth. It works because it taps into something we all want: to matter, to be seen, to connect. Those are not luxuries. Those are human needs, as fundamental as food and shelter. When we meet those needs, everything else improves. Productivity, morale, retention, creativity. But those are just side effects. The real benefit is that people start to feel human again. They start to feel like they belong, like they matter. And when people feel that way, they treat others that way. The ripples spread. He looked directly at the journalists in the room. I know my story went viral because it was unusual, he said. Because a janitor dancing with a rich man's daughter makes good content. But I want to challenge that narrative. What happened that night should not be unusual. It should be ordinary. We should live in a world where people regularly cross social barriers to connect, where children feel safe approaching any adult, where wealth does not create walls, where kindness is expected, not exceptional. That is the world this foundation wants to help create. Not through grand gestures or massive programs, but through millions of small moments of recognition, through people choosing to see each other, through simple acts of kindness multiplied across communities. The room erupted in applause before he could continue. People stood up. The applause grew louder. Thomas stood at the microphone, overwhelmed. He had not expected this reaction. He had just spoken his truth, shared his heart. Apparently that was enough. When the applause finally died down, Thomas spoke his final words. I am just one old man who said yes to a dance, he said quietly. But each of you has the same power I had in that moment, the power to see someone, to acknowledge their humanity, to offer kindness without expectation of return. That power does not require wealth or position or education. It just requires willingness. So I am asking you, will you use that power? Will you look for the invisible people in your life and really see them? Will you create spaces for unlikely connections? Will you choose kindness even when it is uncomfortable? Will you believe that your small acts matter even when you cannot measure their impact? Because they do matter, more than you know, more than you will ever know. And together, all of our small acts can change the world. Not someday. Not eventually. Right now, today. Starting with the next person you meet. Thank you. The applause was deafening. People were standing, clapping, some openly weeping. Thomas stepped back from the microphone, his legs weak. He had done it. He had spoken his truth, and people had heard him. Sarka came onto the stage and hugged him. Katerina was crying. Mr. Svoboda. Tadej stood in the front row with tears streaming down his face. Even Robert, the skeptical executive, was on his feet applauding. As Thomas walked off the stage, people rushed toward him. They wanted to shake his hand, to thank him, to tell him their own stories of invisibility and being seen. He listened to each one, giving them his full attention. An elderly woman told him she had been a housekeeper for 40 years, and nobody had ever asked her name until her employer's grandson did. A young man said he had been homeless, and one teacher had seen his potential and helped him get back on his feet. A corporate executive admitted she had never really looked at the people who served her coffee until watching Thomas's video made her ashamed. Story after story. Person after person. All of them carrying the same truth. We all need to be seen. We all need to matter. And we all have the power to give that gift to others. 3 months after the foundation launch, Thomas stood at his office window, watching the sun rise over the city. The Visible Heart Foundation had exceeded every expectation. 50 organizations had implemented the mentorship program. Thousands of people were participating in structured conversations across barriers of class and position. The stories pouring in were remarkable. A CEO who discovered his janitor was a published poet. A receptionist who helped an executive reconcile with his estranged daughter. A security guard whose wisdom about patience helped a young manager avoid burnout. Connection after connection. Recognition after recognition. People seeing each other and being transformed by what they saw. Thomas received letters every day now, some from program participants sharing their experiences, others from people who had simply watched his speech online and decided to be kinder in their own lives. A grocery store cashier who started greeting every customer by name. A doctor who began sitting down when talking to patients. A teacher who made sure to really see the quiet students in the back row. Small acts multiplied across thousands of lives, the ripples spreading outward in ways that could never be fully measured, but were undeniably real. His phone rang. It was Anna, calling for their weekly conversation. They talked every Sunday now without fail. "Papa," she said when he answered, "I have news." "What is it?" he asked. "David got a job offer here in the city," she said. "A really good one. We have been talking about it, and we want to take it. We want to move home. We want Lucas to grow up near you." Thomas felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Are you sure?" he managed to ask. "We are sure," Anna said firmly. "I spent too many years running from grief. I do not want to run anymore. I want to be near my father. I want my son to really know his grandfather. We are coming home." After they hung up, Thomas sat in his office crying tears of gratitude. His daughter was coming home. His grandson would grow up nearby. The family that had been scattered was gathering again, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because connection mattered more than convenience. Because love was worth prioritizing. There was a knock on his door. "Come in," he called, wiping his eyes. Eliska walked in, holding her mother's hand. The little girl who had asked him to dance 3 months ago. Thomas stood up in surprise. "Eliska," he said, "what are you doing here?" She ran over and hugged him. "I wanted to see you," she said. "Mama said we could visit." Her mother smiled apologetically. "I hope this is all right," she said. "Eliska has been asking to see you for weeks. She talks about that dance all the time." "Of course it is all right," Thomas said. "I am honored. Please sit down." They sat together and Eliska chatted about school and her friends and her new dance classes. She was taking ballet now, inspired by that night at the party. "I want to dance with everyone," she declared. "I want to make people happy like you made me happy." "You already do," Thomas told her gently. "Just by being yourself. Just by seeing people the way you saw me that night." Eliska's mother watched them interact with tears in her eyes. "You changed her life?" she said to Thomas. "How?" he asked. "She was so shy before," the mother explained. "Afraid to talk to adults, afraid to ask for what she wanted. But that night, you said yes to her. You treated her like she mattered. Now she believes she does matter. She talks to everyone. She makes friends everywhere we go. She lights up rooms. That is the gift you gave her." "I just danced with her," Thomas said. "You saw her," the mother corrected. "Really saw her. Children know the difference between adults who tolerate them and adults who genuinely see them. You genuinely saw her. That changed everything." Before they left, Eliska hugged Thomas again. "Thank you for being my friend," she said. "Thank you for asking me to dance," he replied. "You saved my life." "I did?" she asked, eyes wide. "You did," he confirmed. "I was lost, and you found me." That evening, Thomas had dinner with Marta and Victor. They did this once a week now, the 3 friends who had started as colleagues in a basement office. Victor was thriving. He had passed his university exams and was on track to graduate. He still worked part-time at the building, but now he also volunteered with the foundation, helping train program facilitators. Marta had been promoted to head of facilities, overseeing all the cleaning and maintenance staff. She made sure every worker in the building was treated with dignity and respect. She had become an advocate for invisible workers everywhere. "How does it feel?" Victor asked Thomas over dinner. "How does what feel?" Thomas replied. "All of this," Victor gestured broadly. "The foundation. Your daughter moving home. Being recognized everywhere you go. How does it feel to go from invisible to famous?" "I am not famous," Thomas said. "I am just visible. And it feels strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. But mostly it feels right. Like I am finally doing what I was meant to do." "Which is what?" Marta asked. "Teaching," Thomas said. "I have always been a teacher. The classroom just keeps changing." Victor raised his glass. "To Mr. Novak," he said. "The best teacher I ever had." "To Thomas," Marta corrected. "Our friend, who taught us that being seen is a gift we can give each other." They clinked glasses and drank. 3 people from different generations, different backgrounds, different places in life, connected by kindness, by recognition, by the simple choice to see each other as fully human. That was what it was all about. That night, before bed, Thomas looked at Marie's photograph. "I did it," he told her. "I came back to life. I know you wanted that for me. I know you were waiting for me to be ready. I'm sorry it took so long. But I am here now, really here, living fully, loving openly, making a difference. Our daughter is coming home. Our grandson will grow up knowing his grandfather. The work we started together, teaching and loving and seeing people, it continues, through me, through Anna, through everyone we touched. We live forever in the ripples. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for teaching me what matters. I will honor your memory by living well, by being kind, by seeing people the way you always saw them, with love, with recognition, with grace." He placed the photograph back on the nightstand and turned off the light. As he lay in the darkness, Thomas thought about the journey that had brought him here. From the depths of grief to this moment of peace and purpose. From invisibility to visibility. From isolation to connection. It had started with a simple question from a child. "Will you dance with me?" And he had said yes. That single word had opened a door, had reminded him he was still alive, still capable of joy, still able to make a difference. Everything that followed, all the changes and opportunities and recognition, had flowed from that one choice: to say yes, to be seen, to step into the light even when it felt safer to hide in shadows. The next morning, Thomas woke up to sunshine streaming through his window. He followed his morning routine, but now it felt different. Not like going through the motions of survival, but like preparing for another day of meaningful work. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. An old man looked back, lined face and grey hair. But the eyes were different now. They held light again. Hope. Purpose. He was 60 years old. He had been broken by loss and rebuilt by kindness. He had been invisible and then seen. He had forgotten his own worth and then remembered it. And now he was teaching others to do the same. Not from a place of having all the answers, but from a place of having lived the questions. As he put on his jacket and prepared to leave for the office, Thomas felt grateful, not for the recognition or the success of the foundation, but for the journey, for every moment of pain that had taught him empathy, for every day of loneliness that had shown him the value of connection, for every person who had seen him when he felt invisible. The janitor who had danced with a little girl was gone. In his place was a man who understood that every person carries invisible burdens and secret gifts, that we are all worthy of being seen, that small acts of kindness create ripples that change the world in ways we will never fully know, and that it is never too late to say yes. Never too late to step into the light. Never too late to remember that you matter, that you have always mattered, that your life is a gift to be shared, not a burden to be endured. Thomas walked out of his apartment into the bright morning. The city was waking up around him. People hurried past, most of them invisible to each other. But here and there he saw moments of connection. A stranger holding a door, someone helping an elderly person with their groceries, 2 people smiling at each other on the bus. Small acts, simple kindnesses, ripples spreading. He smiled. The work continued, one person at a time, one moment at a time, one dance at a time. And it was enough. It had always been enough. He just had not known it until a little girl asked him to dance, and he found the courage to say yes.